Coming to you from my last day in Hawaii with a snapstorm on independent board directors. I'm going to talk about why they're important. Yes, that's my hair sticking up, and this is my ribs that feel almost cracked from falling off a surfboard. So let's talk about how boards are constructed in early days in a startup. Usually in the earliest days, there's more founders than investors. It's not uncommon in the earliest days to have two founders or two common seats that are held by founders and one by investors, or perhaps 3 and 2. Over time, as you raise more money, usually you'll have people push for some degree of independence on the board. I'll explain why. As your company raises more money, you'll find more VCs wanting to join your boards, and independents are a great way to balance things. Independent board members also bring industry experience, which often VCs don't have, and new founders often don't have as much industry experience. They also bring industry relationships, and they play an important mentoring role that's independent of capital for founders. Perhaps the most common structure I see is 2 VCs, 2 common, and 1 independent. Note that in the earliest days, often the independent seat doesn't get filled. Just because you have it doesn't mean you need to fill it right away. The biggest question is, what is the legal construct of how to appoint an independent? I'm going to cover that in the next snap. I recommend the following legal position: independent to be appointed by common and approved by the venture-backed preferred. And then what the legal docs need to say is approval not to be unreasonably withheld. The reason is you don't want to find yourself in a contentious position where you're nominating people and preferred can just keep blocking. But the converse is true. Preferred wants to be able to make sure that you're not just appointing your uncle or your aunt or your mother, and that's the unreasonable test. What you don't want to do is have a VC just appoint their industry buddies. Industry buddies will want to work on many more boards, so are more likely to side with the VC. I'm not saying they're unethical. I'm not even saying it crosses their mind, but I think they're a degree more independent if you appoint them. In the early days, there's very little contention between founders who are common and investors. Hopefully this never changes. Sometimes it does. I saw one board situation which I wasn't on, in which the founders and the investors became so out of line that the independent actually stepped off the board. The problem is then you had 2 to 2 and nothing major in the company could be decided, and the entire company was going to go down the drain. So I have a solution for you. My solution for you is, if there's a contentious situation and someone wants a new independent on the board, that either majority of preferred or common can force it in 90 days. Let's hope you never face that situation, and I don't see that in many legal docs, but I'm telling you, I've actually seen the 2 to 2 board fights. It ain't pretty. Your goal is to have someone who has industry experience and industry relationships, someone who's going to bring a degree more industry perspective to board conversations than VCs usually. Here's my pro tip. Independents need to have skin in the game. They need to, for reasons I'll explain. I've seen independents with nothing at stake and just not having the same level of care and attention to the hard decisions that have to get made. I like to ask independents to write a $50,000 check, or maybe even up to a $100,000 check. The company then matches with either 2 times or 3 times their investment. So if they give you $50K, you could give them an extra $50K in free stock, or maybe up to $100K. And that's how you compensate an independent director. In effect, if you give them $50K for free, they get a 50% discount to the last price paid. If you give them 2x, by having skin in the game, psychologically, they just take a little more care in their decision making. They feel it a little bit more. And I'm not trying to offend anyone who's an independent director. I'm just telling you, in my observation, when you have a little skin in the game, you care a little bit more. It's human psychology. And frankly, that's the best way to compensate directors. If directors are asking for money, for cash, for being on your board, they're probably not the right people for a startup. If an independent director can't afford $50,000, I'm sorry, they're probably just not the right independent director. You want someone with a degree of success and acumen. Founders, you need to recognize that independents can also be a great advocate for management issues that are hard to bring up. The most common thing that's helpful to advocate is for inside rounds or bridge notes when the company's taking longer to raise money. I'll tell you why. Often VCs like to wait till the last minute to decide on inside rounds, and it's hard for management to push it. Independents can push the issue a little bit easier. They also can play a crucial role either in helping with management compensation, like after many years giving top-ups or increasing salaries, And they can play a really important neutral role when investors are mad at management or management's mad at investors in helping bridge the gap. And honestly, it does happen even in the best of relationship where tensions build either for decisions that people second guess, and independents are valuable. My very strong recommendation is to make the independent local to where you are. You want them to be a mentor. If the independent has to travel to board meetings, it means, again, they're just a degree more removed than you want them to be on your board. Make sure your independent has other board experience. You don't want this to be their first exercise, trust me. I'll give you one final pro tip, and it has to do with executive recruiting of independent board members and why that can be super valuable for you. If your company has raised enough venture capital or has enough revenue to pay $50,000 to $100,000 to a recruiter, it can be one of the most valuable things you've ever done. An executive recruiter will introduce you to 5, 7, 8 different potential senior executives who could sit on your board. In a way, you're paying to get someone on the board, but you're also paying someone to help you build relationships with 7 or 8 really important people. And it's an authentic way that they actually want to meet you. They want to engage and talk about your business, and you don't have to feel guilty by spending time with them. When I went through the process of hiring a chairman for my first company, I met 7 or 8 different individuals, and some of those became great business contacts for me. Of course, you can only pick one, but if you handle it in the right way, the people you don't pick are generally not offended, and they want to be close to your company. Obviously, it depends on having enough cash to be able to afford it, but honestly, it's one of the most valuable exercises I ever went through, and I encourage it with many of my companies. It also helps you make sure you're not just picking somebody that the VC knows through his or her network.